But moving on now to education. It's the start of a new school year in New York, and this one is different. You'll remember in 2020, schools went remote because of the pandemic. And last year, COVID was still very much a thing in schools, with students masked and distanced, with quarantine rules for exposure. But this year, that's all changed. New York has dropped most of its COVID rules in schools, while cases remain relatively low. So this week, we checked in with State Education Commissioner Dr. Betty Rosa on what that all means and what's ahead. Commissioner Rosa, thank you so much, as always, for being here.
Thank you.
Of course. So COVID has had, and I don't have to tell you this, but COVID has had a huge impact on schools for the past few years. This is going to be the first school year in a few years where we have ended a lot of the COVID restrictions. How do you think that changes things in schools, both in terms of operation and in learning for kids?
Well, I think that we have an opportunity to, and just to kind of reflect on some of the things that have happened. We really had an incredible conversation with our stakeholders, superintendents, and many of our teachers about lessons learned and some of the things that we have to put in place in order to make the transition back to what I would call in-person full-time. And so that's what we have spent, I would say, the last year looking at putting in place and addressing the specific issues that are critical: the academic, the social emotional, the issue of dealing with trauma. What are the kinds of things that we do to create the human connection once again, and to transition our students back to the enjoy of our school settings.
Were these hard decisions to make? I imagine transitioning from full in-person learning to remote learning at the start of the pandemic was a very difficult decision. And then now we're going back the opposite direction, hoping to get all kids in school and things at least back to some sense of normal. Was that a hard decision to make, or was it pretty easy?
Oh no, this, as you know, children, young people have been in isolation, isolated, disconnected. Those are not easy decisions to, not even just decisions, acknowledging that it's going to take time. Even when we think about the mask issue, right? We have not seen the smile on our children's faces because of wearing the mask. So all of those are transitions that we have to reconnect to, and that our schools, the joy of when kids see each other, right? Running up to each other and knowing that they have their own way of greeting each other and welcoming each other. So all of that has to become part of the new fabric, which was obviously, all of us know, was part of the existing fabric.
So the state is relaxing these restrictions because our COVID numbers are relatively low compared to where they were at the height of the pandemic and even just a few months ago. And during the pandemic, learning changed for students, as we're talking about, quite a bit, especially in these lower grade school levels. It was really confusing for them to, learn in a way that they weren't used to. And school is already a new thing for them being at such a young age. How do you think that's impacted this generation of students, and what can we do about it?
Well, I think we're really actually looking at, within those lessons, as I said, we're looking at what were some of the positives, right? Because everything, sometimes when you have to pivot and you have to move to a new way of doing, not only doing work, but responding to the necessities of the moment, that we learn new ways of doing things. One of the things that we want to emphasize are the lessons that we have learned that we want to retain and we want to hold on to, and we want to expand, and that's important in the new, what I would call the new wave, the new phase of education. And for the little ones, I think it's trying to look at those transitions from elementary to middle to high school, and certainly even to college. So we're looking at what are the kinds of things that we need to do to ensure that we continue to use the technology that we have had to pivot to, as a tool to expand learning and to expand learning in ways that we had not utilized prior to the pandemic.
Now, at the same time the state is facing a teacher shortage, I actually think it might be a national problem. It's a real problem as you're transitioning from the COVID restrictions back to where we are now. Do you think there's anything that can be done about that? What's the answer there? Is it something from your agency, or is it something the legislature can do? How can we bring these teachers in?
Well, I think the even prior to the pandemic, I think the pandemic in some ways, it was quite exhausting to many teachers who were as we know, they were the educational first responders. So we have invested in programs like teacher opportunity programs, right? Teachers of Tomorrow, trying to not only diversify our teacher pipeline, but also to ensure that we create a narrative and we create opportunities to really dialogue about what teaching involves and what an incredible profession it is. And the department has been actively working with the Board of Regents to create a flexibility in terms of having individuals enter the profession. But we've also talked about investing in recruiting, retaining, and retooling. So those have been part of our conversations to ensure that we support teachers, because it's not just about recruiting them, it's really also about retaining them and making sure that teachers reconnect with the kinds of learning and the kinds of opportunities and tools that they need to do a high quality job.
Now, we're talking about investments. Do you think more money would help there? As you know, the state is investing an historic amount in public education. Would you like to see more money come from the governor and the legislature in next year's state budget to help with this problem, or just to help struggling districts overall? We are investing a significant amount in education, but that doesn't mean that some schools may still be struggling.
Well, obviously, our profession is such that it's so complex and there's so many needs, so that while we all know that the federal government made an extreme significant investment and those dollars are being used, that in fact we know that we're going to need additional dollars. And just to mention, one of the things that the governor has asked us to do is engage in cross-agency work, right, with the Department of Mental Health, the Department of Labor, in terms of looking at some of the skills that our students need to go back to in order to be ready for both college and career. And so those kinds of investments, making sure that our dollars are not isolated, but rather creating a cross-purpose, full kind of approach to educating our children.
Absolutely. Education is in a lot of ways about intersectionality for a lot of different populations, so I could see how that work would be really helpful. But we are out of time. State Education Commissioner Dr. Betty Rosa, thank you so much.
Thank you.